So
rationing. And the Screen magazine in its second issue tried to explain to me and he wanted to know that what he could do if they were in all greater cities become a monument to the courage and faith of the upstart Americans. Buffalo Hunter, who with his breaking up made the old
My name is Dean Contover, and this is a history show. Today we have a gentleman, his name is David Dubinsky. He was in the United States Marine Corps. He was in the U.S. Marine
Drum and Bugle Corps, the Commandant Zone.
The Commandant Zone in Washington, D.C., so he's got a lot of stories to tell. He saw a lot of famous people. He was at the White House, and this should be a very interesting story because a lot of people don't know about the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. It's made up of how many men?
Right now, there's about 80 to 85 in the Drum Corps.
And they're picked from the elite of...
It's an audition group, similar to the Marine Band. Most of the individuals who are selected to participate in the Commandant's Own have drum corps experience throughout the United States or come from college university bands.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I myself had a band and drum corps experience growing up in the city of Philadelphia.
Oh, good point. Okay, let's talk about it. You grew up in Philadelphia, brothers, sisters?
I have an older brother who's a retired scientist.
Wow, interesting. Maybe I'll have him on the show. You grew up in Philadelphia, decided, just a brother, right? You said?
Yes.
That's it. Where, South Philadelphia?
South Philadelphia. My mother and father had a luncheonette, Joe's Luncheonette at 8th and Rittner in South Philadelphia. Despite what people might say about Pat's and Gino's steaks,
yes,
also in South Philadelphia,
which are famous,
which are the legacy South Philadelphia steak joints.
Yeah.
My dad's Joe's Luncheonette was the best in South Philadelphia.
Oh, that's too bad because Gino's. I've been to those. In fact, I was there this summer. At having a
Did they hit you with
cheese?
Cheese whiz?
Yeah. Explain cheese whiz.
Well,
and whiz.
Here's the difference between Pat's and Gino's and Joe's.
Right.
Pat's and Gino's would squirt this chemically treated mix of cheese, liquefied, semi-liquefied, onto the steak sandwich to give it kind of a cheese flavor.
Okay.
My dad would actually use actual American cheese that was in a long package, and he would use a slicing
sort of like
machine,
a brick.
A brick, and
Yeah,
he would
right.
slice the cheese, and you would have real cheese on your steak or your hoagie. It was phenomenal. It was the best.
And what happened?
He decided that he got out of the business, and he was older at that point.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, my parents moved out of South Philadelphia into the Northeast section. They retired, and
Oh, good for them.
Yeah.
So, how did you decide to go in the Marines? Did you go to college before? Did you? Were you out of high school?
Growing up, I participated in drum corps in Philadelphia, the Vassallo Musketeers, Pennsylvania state champions, and
So it came natural to you, the music.
And I was also in bands all through junior high school and high school.
So this came natural to you.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, a friend of mine who was also a trumpet player, he went and auditioned without me even knowing about it, and he was accepted. And
to the Marines.
He told me about it, the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps.
All right.
I investigated a little bit, and I went to Washington, took an audition. They said they'd love to have me. But you're going to have to enlist in the Marine Corps. And I enlisted in the Marine Corps. And I went through Parris Island, South Carolina, and advanced infantry training at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And my orders were cut to come directly to Washington after combat training.
All right,
it was quite a transition.
Let's talk about basic training. How old were you when you went to basic training?
I was about 18 years old.
You were 18 years old, okay. And you're in basic training. What do you remember about Marine basic training? How long was it?
What I remember, there was a friend of the family in South Philadelphia who was a Marine veteran. And he said to me, he said, Dave, he said, I'm really glad you're going into the Marine Corps. He said, you're going to be proud of what boot camp is going to do for you. And he said, the one piece of advice I want to give you is keep your mouth shut and just do exactly what you're told to do, and it would be fine. And you know something? That's exactly what I did, and everything was fine, but it was the most grueling physical and psychological experience that I've ever endured in my life. Both boot camp and the advanced infantry training at Camp Lejeune really teaches a young man or a young woman that really there's not too many other things that you can do in your life that you can't accomplish if you put your mind to it and put your body to it. The body and the mind are capable of unbelievable accomplishments.
Did they say that you only use 30% of your mind, and when you're in the Marine Corps, they try to use that, or your physical attributes also?
They drain every ounce of whatever's inside of you. They will extract it from you during that training period. It is unbelievably intense.
Did you lose weight or gain weight?
I lost weight, and I was like a rock when I came out. You know, the interesting thing in terms of the type of service that I had in the Marine Corps as a musician and a public relations person through music in the Marine Corps, you know, when you come out of the training, you're ready to kill, go into combat, and face the most intensely adversarial combatant. And then in my situation, on the turn of a dime, I was heading not to Vietnam, but I was heading to Washington, D.C. To perform another task for the Marine Corps.
When you say Vietnam, you joined or you enlisted in 1966.
66.
I want to get that on the record. Yeah.
Yes, during the Vietnam
War. So there was after basic training and after advanced infantry training. Which how many weeks was advanced infantry training?
I think it was 8 weeks. I think it was 16 weeks. I'm guessing. This is now a long time ago. I think it was 16 weeks of boot camp.
When you
and
ponder
8
it,
weeks.
it is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you'll remember things that you haven't remembered in a long time.
I probably will.
So basic training was 8 weeks. We know that, right? Is that?
It was 8 to 12 weeks. I can't remember.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you remember? Do you remember shooting the rifle? And what rifle did you have at the time?
Yeah, we had the M14.
Okay, good rifle.
And you know, in Marine training, you're qualifying, I believe, if my memory serves me, you're qualifying at distances of 100 yards, 300 yards, and 500 yards. At 500 yards, when you're targeting in on the bullseye, the bullseye, which is part of a target that's 6 foot by 6 foot when you're standing in front of it, it looks about the size of a very small little pea sitting at the very top of your front sight blade. And you actually have to tighten your sling and hold your breath and listen to your heartbeat and try to squeeze off that trigger between heartbeats. Because if the heart beats at the time you squeeze off the trigger, that round coming out of your rifle may probably not even hit the target, let alone the bullseye.
That was poetic. That was poetic. I like that.
It was incredible. It was incredible.
How did you do with the target at 500? What was it? 500 meters?
Yeah, I did very well. Yeah, I qualified as an expert rifleman. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever pick up a rifle before? I mean.
No.
No.
No. Only in arcades in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Yeah.
There's a story to that. It reminds me of something. But, so, other than arcades, right? You expert. Did you fire the pistol?
I fired the pistol in requalification exercises when I was at my duty station in Washington. Every year we had to requalify with the rifle and the pistol.
And the pistol, okay. 45 pistol?
45 caliber pistol.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you marched around. You remember bayonet training?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pontificate on that.
Well, it was preceded by the use of Bugle sticks in hand-to-hand combat.
I remember Bugle sticks.
And you had a helmet on, and but when you got hit in the head, if you were unlucky enough to get hit in the side of the head with a young, strong Marine who was wielding a Bugle stick that had a padded end, but it was padded very tight, it felt like a boxing glove coming from a horse.
But you had a caged helmet.
You had a caged helmet, but the front was open. The sides were padded. If you got hit in the head, luckily I didn't get hit in the head. I hit a few people in the head myself. I was knocked over a couple times by hits to the shoulder.
So we open a Bugle stick venue,
Yeah.
and have people go there and just beat up each other. And
Yeah.
you think we'd make some money doing that?
I think we can make some money. That would be a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Of course, we'd have to take out some pretty serious liability insurance.
Yeah, probably. Probably. But I do remember that. And then you go to the next stage,
Yeah.
where you're
Yeah.
running with the bayonet and everything.
Oh yeah. One of two of my best memories during training were.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. It's funny how you're right. You're spurring memories that are 40, 45, almost 50 years old, 40 years old.
Okay.
So
I don't want to age you too much.
So you're sound asleep, and it's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and you've just been beaten to hell, and you're exhausted, and as soon as you hit the rack, you're asleep in seconds. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning. You're in a deep sleep. And all of a sudden, the lights come on, and the 3 drill instructors are running up and down the squad bay in boot camp. And they have these metal bars in their hand, and they're just banging them up against the double racks as they're running up and down. And they're screaming, "Get up, get up, get up, get up!" So you're jumping out of bed, and you're in your underwear. And next thing you know, the weather wasn't bad. It was in South Carolina. You're running outside with your bucket. It was a fire bucket. You're running outside with your fire bucket in your underwear, and you assembled on these yellow footprints outside of the barracks. And the next thing you know, you're running off for 5 miles. After
In combat boots.
2 minutes ago you were asleep, and now you're running. Yeah, right. So that was one kind of a funny thing that happened. The other thing is during night fire training, you're in full combat gear, and you have your rifle wrapped around your arms, and it's down in front of you, and you're basically crawling on your knees and your feet and your elbows. And there's live machine gun fire firing across and over your head.
And the explosions?
And they have explosions happening around these sandbags. It's impossible to go in a straight line. They have it figured out, so it's a maze, so you're forced to move in all different directions. And if you're not really bright enough to stay down and you happen to stand up, you're going to lose your head. There's no question about it.
Yeah. Those machine guns were locked, though.
Yeah.
They couldn't swivel them or anything.
Yeah.
They just shot
I'm not
over.
sure what they were.
Yeah, but
if you know that they were locked, it's nice to know that they were locked. Yeah, so that nobody could to take somebody out if they felt uncomfortable about a particular recruit.
Yeah.
Right.
So many meters above the ground. It's just the noise
and the intensity. Right.
Yeah.
It was definitely not your typical fireworks on the 4th of July.
Now, let me ask you this question. When you had the M14, you put the bayonet on the M14. What did you think when you put that bayonet on? What were you thinking?
Well, it's both a scary thing if you've never fixed a bayonet before and understood, after hand-to-hand combat training, what the potential was. It was a scary thing, and it was also something that brought some deep respect for what it was that you were doing in defense of the country, potentially in defense of the country, and in an actual, as you thought about an actual combat situation that you might be in.
Especially hand-to-hand in regards to close order contact with the bayonet.
The instructor that we had at hand-to-hand combat it got to the point where he was talking about, if you're face to face, you had no weapon in your hand, and your adversary had no weapon in their hand. You were basically going for vital. You were grabbing for the throat and literally ripping the person's throat out, and other parts of the body, which we don't necessarily have to talk about.
It brings back memories, but I'm not going to pontificate on that aspect of it.
After going through that kind of intense training, and having your whole mindset completely changed and refocused, you're ready to go into combat, no matter what the theater of war it might have been. And then there I was, I'm off to Washington, D.C. Now, some of the individuals that I met up with that were my brothers and sisters in the Marine Drum Corps, some had a combat experience, some did not. It was a mix. It was a mix.
I'm going to show you a picture of you in basic training. This is basically the yearbook. Is that the yearbook?
That is the yearbook.
Right. After basic training, everybody gets a yearbook.
Yes.
And I'm going to show you a picture. Oh, this is the Marine Corps. Even in the Army, they have a yearbook with your pictures of everyone. As you can see, Marine Corps. I'm going to show you a picture.
It has the platoon number, platoon 137.
Well, you remember that, huh? Yeah, I bet you haven't said that in a long time. There's a picture right here. I have my finger on it. That's David. Now, David, it seems like everybody has the same uniform on. It's a Marine uniform. And when you see things now in regards to, that's a little better. There he is right there, believe it or not. When you have the dress uniform, everybody seems to have the dress uniform on. Is that it's expensive uniform to buy? You can't. It's not issued to you. You have to buy that uniform.
You have to buy it. It's not issued. And as you reminded me, I had actually forgotten, and you reminded me before we sat down here today, that the Marine photographer at that point basically puts a mock jacket on you and a hat, and they use that for the photography session. Yeah.
So when you see Marines or even soldiers wounded or basically killed in Vietnam, KIAs, not Vietnam, I mean Afghanistan, what happens is that that's just a show, isn't it, more or less? I mean, with the American flag, I mean, it's just to have them.
Well, it's hard to determine. I think you'd have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. In a situation like that, where a Marine is shown in dress blues,
it's usually taken at basic training.
Yeah.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah. If it's a picture that was taken at basic training, that was not necessarily their uniform. Yes, that's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that. And it cost, I think I looked online, like $230 just to buy the Marine dress uniform.
That doesn't surprise me.
You know, I don't know how much it was when you were in, but because I knew the dress uniform for the Army was a blue uniform, and that was expensive. And usually top NCOs or officers would buy that dress uniform, even though you're issued, what do they call it? Sort of Class A uniform that the Marine.
The Class A uniform is basically a seasonal uniform.
Yeah.
You'd have a summer uniform and you'd have a winter uniform, basically.
Now, do you remember taking shots?
Oh yeah, it's interesting. We veterans must share a commonality. At that point, they were using the high pressure guns as we walked in single file, and there were medical technicians on both sides with these guns giving us shots in both arms. And when I got my tetanus shot, I think what happened was the technician who gave me the shot, instead of getting it into soft tissue, they got it into a nerve, and my entire arm locked.
Wow.
And I haven't felt that kind of pain in a long time. the entire arm just locked up on me. But other than that, it wasn't bad.
Usually, in basic training, you're given 15 shots, not all at the same time. It's usually 3 or 5 or 1 shot, and then a couple of weeks later, they give you 3 or 5 or whatever it is that they
I don't
give
recall
you.
that, but-
It's not done because I have my shot record.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, and
you have the dates?
Dates, yeah, and it
No
gives the
kidding.
dates, yeah.
Wow.
And so I guess veterans are brought up understanding that this is preventive medicine. You know, cholera shots, yellow fever, remember that, and
Yeah.
shot, and things
Yeah.
like that. The military wants you to be prepared if you go to any war environment that you're protected for shots because they don't want to give them to you that day that you're going to a jungle warfare school or whatever in the jungle or a cold weather type of situation. They want to make sure basically that you have all your shots and you're up to date.
Right.
And if you every year you'd get a series of shots too, right? If you remember that. So we get out of basic training, you get a certificate. You finish. How do you feel when you get,
You're extremely proud of yourself. Yeah, I mean, as you're going through training, you continue, at least in the beginning stages, you ask yourself the question, you know, am I really capable of getting through this? And then as you progress through the training, you realize that you're a lot stronger, both mentally and physically, than you anticipated.
It doesn't
and
build
emotionally.
confidence in you?
It does. It builds extreme confidence. Yeah, they're really. In my adult life, there weren't too many things that I wasn't afraid of venturing into.
Yeah, it's funny how that gives you enough confidence that you're not fearful of, walking the streets or
Sure.
just doing what you have to do in life. I think it's a good lesson for some young kids. I'm not saying you should join the Marines, maybe the Army or the Navy, but it just gives you a lot of confidence, and you can do things afterwards and go to school, to college. If you can do that, you can go to college.
Sure.
And a lot of veterans have done that.
I was actually fortunate enough under the GI Bill, after I was discharged from the Marine Corps, to attend Berklee College of Music.
Oh, good for you.
And if it wasn't for the GI Bill and my veteran status, I probably could not have afforded to go into college.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's what I did after I got out of the military. I completed my college also. So you get out of basic training. Hand grenades, you threw the hand grenade?
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Pulling the pin?
Oh, yeah.
You can't pull it with your teeth.
No.
Like,
Audie Murphy.
Audie Murphy used to pull it with his teeth,
Yeah.
and John Wayne, and
John Wayne,
all
yeah.
those guys. And you can't pull a pin. The pin is very difficult to
Right.
pull out. Very difficult.
It's made
right?
to be deliberate.
It's made.
Yeah.
And there's a little spoon, they call it, right? You remember that? And how many seconds did you have after
I
the
don't
spoon?
remember
It was,
that.
you only had like 6 seconds once the spoon.
You don't
released.
want to take a cell phone call while you're holding the grenade when it's in its live status.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Definitely. In fact, too bad we didn't have cell phones in the military. It would have made it much easier
You're right.
in those days because they had to carry radios that were weighing 25 pounds on the back,
Sure.
and just to operate for a 10-mile radius. If you
can
remember
imagine.
that,
I can
you know.
imagine.
So you go to advanced
Infantry
infantry
training.
training. Now, why didn't you go to Washington D.C.? You auditioned for.
That's a very good point. The Marine concept of training is regardless of your MOS standing for Military Occupational Specialty.
Right.
Okay. Regardless of what the intent of the Marine Corps might be for you post-training, every Marine is considered a basic rifleman and a basic combatant in a war type situation.
In the Army, we call it infantryman.
Okay. In the Marine Corps, we call it grunt.
Oh, well, we call it
so
grunt,
every
too,
Marine
yeah.
is a basic grunt. Some Marines continue on as grunts, and other Marines wind up in a motor pool or as musicians or in the kitchen as chefs or artillery or a truck in the heavy artillery area or whatever. So every Marine goes through basic training at, in my case, at Parris Island, South Carolina, and then you move to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, for what's called advanced infantry training. The primary difference between basic training in the Marine Corps and advanced infantry training is boot camp teaches you as an individual what it takes to be a Marine. And my impression of what advanced infantry training teaches you is how Marines function as a team. So you learn the technical and tactical aspects of fighting in combat situations as a team, as a squad, as a platoon.
It brings cohesion to
It brings cohesion, and what it does is bond you with your brothers and sisters who are going through the same training, so that you learn to respond in an instant to a command that might be a matter of life and death in a combat situation. There isn't time to think about what you might do as an individual when an order is given in a combat situation.
Remember, you're also in a barracks with these people 24 hours a day, different religions, different, ethnic groups.
Right. It's a complete mix from all the different geographical and ethnic parts,
areas of the United
religious
States.
parts of the country.
And they weld you into one unit.
You are hopefully you are taught to shed your prejudices about skin color, religion, or no religion, or ethnicity, and you are basically brother and sister Marines.
Under the banner of the American flag.
Under the banner of the American flag and the United States Constitution. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you did have to take that oath, right, to the Constitution.
Right. Defend the United States and the Constitution.
of the United States, yeah. You remember that. So how many weeks is advanced infantry training?
Well, that's what I can remember, either 6 or 8 weeks, yeah.
Okay. So this is, when you get out of, did you get a book like this?
No.
This is just a basic book of
From basic training.
basic training. Nice leather-bound book. The camera guys come, and I'm going to show you another picture right here, if you can key up. You're laughing, so tell me about the picture.
I'm loading my rifle on the rifle range, waiting for the next round of targets to be
M14 rifle.
M14.
Right. So
The precursor to the M16.
yeah. Did you ever fire the M16?
No.
No, you never.
No,
So
I never fired an M1 either.
The M1 Grand, the one that used to.
Right.
But
Now
they didn't have the M1s. They were obsolete, basically,
Right.
weren't they?
Now, the M1 is a very traditional rifle for the Marine Corps in the 20th century. When we move on in our discussion and we talk about my Marine Corps career at 8th and I, Washington, D.C., the oldest post in the Marine Corps, the famous silent drill team of the Marine Corps, who performed with the Commandant's own, the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, very often we would be on the road together. They use the actual M1 rifles.
They did, okay.
They're using the real thing, and they're throwing them around like plastic toys. It's absolutely amazing.
Well, with that, we're going to have to end the show. Okay. Thank you for coming on. We'll do another show, and we'll talk about 8th and I and how important that is to the Marine Corps and how important it is to the nation in regards to you being in the Drum and Bugle Corps. So stay tuned next week. It should be a very interesting show. I want to thank you for coming
Dean.
on. Yeah,
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Definitely, it looks good. This is, if I can definitely get this out before, this is the Drum and Bugle Corps
In front of the White House.
in front of the White House. I don't know if you can get that real quick, but that's them there. So next week, watch the show next week, and we'll be more than happy to talk about the Drum and Bugle Corps in Washington, D.C.
questioning. And the Screen magazine, in its second issue, tried to explain to me and he wanted to know that what he could do if they were approved. The world greater city become a monument to the courage and faith of the unscorned Americans.
That was David Dubinsky playing for you. He was in the United States Marine Corps Band. And I'm sorry, United States Marine Corps
Drum and Bugle
Bugle
Corps, the
Corps.
Commandant's own.
Commandant's own. What's the difference between the Marine Band and the Drum and Bugle Corps?
That's an excellent question, Dean. The Marine Band consists of musicians and band musicians, orchestral musicians. There's actually choral musicians involved as well. And they perform a full range of band repertoire. The Marine Drum and Bugle Corps is more of a marching ceremonial unit that performs, again, a full range of musical selections, but it consists of all brass instruments that in the case of the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, they are basically silver-plated instruments and percussion instruments. So you don't have the woodwind instruments that the band has. Mm-hmm. You don't have string instruments, and you don't have the choral component that the band has.
This is the Drum and Bugle Corps?
Mm-hmm.
Where's the location?
The location is Arlington, Virginia, right in front of the internationally famous Marine Corps Memorial that captures that moment on the island of Iwo Jima.
Yep. Raising the flag.
Raising the flag.
I forgot the name of the mountain, but that's
Mount Suragachi.
Mount, what was that?
Suragachi.
Suragachi, Mount Suragachi. Famous picture, one of the most famous pictures that come out of World War II.
Sure.
And then it became a monument to the Marines. It was built after World War II.
Yeah.
And you were in the Marines from 1966 to 69. You went to basic training. Paris Island, you went to Camp Lejeune for advanced infantry training. This is for the Marines that are out there, right? And from Lejeune, you got orders to go to Washington, D.C.
That's correct.
And you fired an expert with M14 rifle and basic training. I just want to tell the Marines and the Army personnel that you did that. And then you got orders for Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised? Because in '66, the war was,
right.
in its prime. Explain that, how you...
So prior to joining the Marine Corps, a friend of mine had auditioned and was accepted, and he went to Paris Island and Camp Lejeune and then received orders to go to Washington. And he told me about it, and we were both trumpet players at the time and very good friends. And he said, "Dave, you should really do this. You'd love it." So I went to Washington, took the audition. They accepted me, and they explained to me that I would have to enlist in the Marine Corps and go through training, and that they would go through the Department of Defense. And once I successfully completed basic training and advanced infantry training, they would have the Department of Defense cut my orders to come to Washington, and that would be my duty station. But they provided a caveat to me, which I understood, because this was right in the middle of the Vietnam War, that they couldn't guarantee 100% that I would be coming to Washington, D.C. And I accepted that. And when I finished with my training at Camp Lejeune, my orders were in fact cut to go to Washington, D.C. So upon discharge from Camp Lejeune, my orders were to go directly to Washington, D.C. and perform with the Commandant's own. And that's how I served my...
How many personnel in that unit?
Uh,
And where's the location?
Approximately 80. It is the oldest Marine Corps post in the world. It was established in the 1800s, and it is the home of the Commandant of the Marine Corps and all of the the highest-ranking general staff that serve with the Commandant to direct the military and civilian actions
How
of the
big
Marine
is
Corps.
that compound?
It is approximately a city block square at 8th and I Street Southeast in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, very important to put Southeast in.
Yes, it was originally built to defend the Capitol. That was its primary mission.
Well, aren't you a secondary role to defend the Capitol?
Yes,
If
absolutely.
If something...
Absolutely, yeah. And our primary role is to defend the barracks itself, the base, because of the fact that the Commandant of the Marine Corps and the General Staff is
Live there with their
right there.
families.
They have, there's a huge mansion for the Commandant and smaller, in lay terms, mini mansions, and the families of the generals and the generals themselves they reside when they're not on missions for the military.
So the Commandant is the top person in the Marine Corps. He's the
Correct.
4-star general usually.
Correct.
And do you remember the Commandant when you were there?
I do not, and I'm embarrassed to say that. Yeah,
Well,
I should know that.
The chain of command.
I should know that.
I know.
Yeah.
Do you remember
It's
who
tough.
the president was when you
Yeah,
got
Lyndon
there?
Johnson was the president.
Okay.
And the last performance that I made, that I was involved with, was the inauguration of Richard Nixon, the inaugural ball, and then very shortly thereafter, I was discharged in February of the same year, 1969.
Okay. All right.
So at the barracks, just getting back to your
okay.
original question, Dean.
Yes.
At the barracks, at that time, the Marine Corps barracks at 8th and I Southeast was the home of the Marine Band, the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. The silent drill team performed there, but they were stationed at the Washington Navy Yard, and they were actually stationed just before you get to the Navy Yard. There was I believe it was called Richardson Hall, just down the street on 8th Street as you head towards the Washington Navy Yard. And there was the service company and what was called MCI, Marine Corps Institute, which was basically the Marine Corps' answer to internet learning before the internet was part of our lives. Marines could enroll in Marine Corps classes relative to Marine Corps combat activities. I and myself enrolled in tactics of the Marine Rifle Squad. I took a course while I was in the Drum Corps. Mm-hmm. And but you could take a variety of different courses that were not necessarily related to the Marine Corps.
So this is basically in the Drum and Bugle Corps. There were probably 80 personnel.
Right.
That you know, with leaves and vacations and so forth.
Right.
You interacted with each other and you worked as a team.
Yes, we did. Yes, we
What,
did.
in Drum and Bugle Corps, was there a set number that you was set to when you were marching in the parade, or was it could be expanded and contracted? or was there
Again, that's
flexibility?
an excellent question. There were a number of different performances, types of performances that we were involved in. We were called upon to participate in parades. When we participated in major events like inaugural parades or major holiday types of events like Veterans Day or the 4th of July, Independence Day, we would have the full complement of the Drum Corps. If we were performing at what was called flag pageants, one of the functions that we offered was to
Excuse me, I'm
Yes.
sorry to
Sure.
This is, what is this?
This is a
documentation?
citation from the inaugural committee issued in 1969 to me as a participant in the inaugural inauguration of Richard Milhouse Nixon on the 20th day of January in 1969.
Okay. Because you did say you participated. I
Yes.
just want to get that on the record.
So one of the educational things we did in the elementary schools throughout Washington, Maryland, and Virginia would be to take a small aggregate from the Commandant's Zone, the Marine Drum Bugle Corps, along with the what was called the color guard of the Marine Corps, consisting of the American flag and the Marine Corps flag, the actual certified Marine Corps flag.
When you say certified, what's that mean?
This was the flag that represented the Marine Corps flag for all Marines, living and dead, in the United States of
Did it
America.
have its streamers?
It had streamers. It had palms and clusters.
Explain the streamers on the
Well,
flag.
the streamers basically represented all of the Marine Corps expeditions, campaigns that the Marines have been involved in since the Marine Corps inception, all the way to the current date. And every time that there's a new Marine Corps involvement in a combat situation, there's a new citation that's added to that flag.
Do you know how many?
Right off the top of my head, I do not.
Okay.
I do not.
But I mean, once you put those streamers on, you have that flag, that becomes very heavy.
Yeah, it's heavy, and the flag is revered. It's treated like gold. Yeah.
It's put away and
Yeah,
it's
locked away
locked
and-
away and
right.
guarded. Is it guarded?
Right. It is guarded, yeah. Along with Chesty the bulldog, which is I failed to mention that the Marine Corps mascot is Chesty the bulldog.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he is he has a vest that is a Marine Corps dress blue mock.
So there's a dog at 8th and 9th.
Absolutely.
And
Chesty the dog
no kidding.
is also revered.
So
yeah.
they, of course, he was fed by the taxpayers' dollars. Right?
Absolutely, and only fed the best.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Right, and he had to go through physical training to requalify as a Marine every year.
Oh, is that right? You had the Commandant there. Who protected the compound? Who guarded the compound 24/7?
There were constantly Marines. Every one of us had full combat gear and rifles, and there was an ammunition area where we could procure ammunition. There was a very sad situation during at the time of the assassination of Martin Luther King, when Washington was literally burning, where we were, everyone, regardless of your capacity as a Marine, was dressed in combat gear. The barracks were completely secured, and we were in various stations inside the barracks, ready to protect the barracks in case there was a civilian incursion inside.
What about protecting the president or anything like that?
Well, the president has his own contingent of secret police and yeah.
Yeah, I understand. And backup also.
And backup, yeah.
So there was riots in Washington, D.C. in '68.
It was a very sad situation. Yeah, very sad.
And you guys were basically on pins and needles because it might.
Yeah, we were on basically red alert to protect the barracks and its contents, including the Commandant of the Marine Corps and all of the general staff there. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Live ammunition?
Yes.
No kidding.
Oh, fixed bayonets.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it was for real.
Machine guns?
I don't recall that, but if you look through if you're on the web or you have literature that shows the barracks itself, there are ramparts In fact, I often played taps at the end of some of our ceremonies on top of those ramparts. But from that vantage point, you could easily mount several machine guns. So it would not surprise me that there were automatic weapons protecting that environment.
Let's talk about the good things. You participated in a lot of things in Washington, D.C. You were inaugural. Were you in the inaugural parade?
Yes.
I think you were in every parade, inaugural parade, right?
Right.
Even if it's cold weather, you have to march.
Right. Every parade that would warrant a military presence, we were there. We were called upon to play. There were about 3 or 4 of us that were on a rotation to play taps at Arlington Cemetery for officers' funerals. And there were situations where they actually, for generals that passed away, they had the caissons, the horse-drawn caissons, with a whole platoon from the Ceremonial Guard Company.
Where were they located?
In dress blues, right at our barracks.
Late night, okay.
Right. And the Marine Band would have a contingent marching up the pathway from the chapel after any kind of a religious ceremony was conducted. And I would be at the graveside with the Marine Rifle squad that was going to be firing the rifle volleys out of respect. And that was one of the duties that I had. In the summertime, on Friday evenings, the Marine Band, the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, the Silent Drill Team, and the Ceremonial Guard Company and the Marine Corps Institute Marines were all in their dress blues. The Marine Band and the Commandant's Own were in their dress reds, and they set up stands, viewing stands, a whole city block long along the inside of the parade deck that we called it. And people would call for reservations, and oftentimes they were dignitaries, maybe foreign dignitaries that were visiting the president, would be sitting basically just off of the 50-yard line on the parade deck. And every Friday night it was packed. And at 9 o'clock the floodlights would go on, and it's an incredible ceremony that is outlined in this
Let me show it.
in this booklet that I brought along with me that features the Marine highlights of the Marine Band on the left and the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps on the right. And I believe on the back cover there is another picture of what it looks like at night when everything is lit up, and you could see the Marines in their dress blues on the right in formation, and you could see in the reviewing stands the participants who were guests for the evening.
Right there, right?
And that occurred every Friday night in the summertime.
Wow.
And on Tuesday nights, on Tuesday evenings, that's when this ceremony called the Sunset Parade would occur, where the Silent Drill Team would perform on the field in front of where the picture is representing. There was a huge green lawn.
And this is every Tuesday?
Every Tuesday night
in the
summertime.
Okay.
In front of the Marine
must
Corps
be
Memorial.
hot,
It was
humid.
very hot. We were perspiring
Yeah.
unbelievably. And at the end
Were
of
your
the
buses air conditioned?
the buses were air conditioned.
Oh, good.
Yes. And at the end of the ceremony at the Marine Corps Memorial, I would perform taps on top
get
of
this
the Marine Corps Memorial, and that would close out
See, there he is
close
standing,
out the program.
There he is standing on top. That's quite high.
quite high. I would need a ladder to, and members of the service company would provide me with the ladder prior to the show beginning.
When you go to Washington, make sure you go there Tuesday evenings.
I do.
You do?
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking about the.
Oh, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
You should check online and in advance
Mm-hmm.
and try to get tickets to the Friday night parade. And
That's good to know.
and it's an open environment for the Tuesday evening situation. Although if you do call the barracks for seats, there are prime seats for the Tuesday Iwo Jima Memorial, but you have to be in a larger group.
I see.
They seat by group.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you, you did ceremonies, did you do ceremonies for the Congressional Medal of Honor, things like that, the Medal of Honor
Yes.
recipients?
it's,
Medal of Honor recipients?
You know, it's interesting you're bringing up this, the whole notion of awards and citations and medals. There are unit citations and medals, and then there are distinguished medals that are awarded. And it probably would be a good idea to differentiate between the two. Many
Like what is the decorated veteran, I mean, a soldier or
Sure.
a Marine, or what?
A highly
what is
decorated.
Or highly decorated.
Sure.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that's.
'Cause,
I'm
think
glad
a
you
lot
brought
of
that up.
I think a lot of people get mixed up with that, and they don't know that just because somebody has a lot of medals, they think
Sure.
they're highly decorated, and that's not always the case.
Sure. So, with all due respect to everyone who has served in any branch of the service, whether you're in a combat theater or not, you are awarded certain types of citations or medals. You might receive a good conduct medal.
Some ribbons also.
Ribbons, a national defense medal. You could even be in a combat theater, but be in a non-combat environment behind the actual line of combat, in a supportive role, in a medical or dietary, or you could be something
Support.
in any of the
any
support
support
environments,
you
a
could
clerical
work in.
support, working in the radio communications area, any type of support. And if you're in that theater, you would receive a citation or a medal or a ribbon
Right.
for that particular
Campaign medal.
A
that's-
campaign,
yeah.
right? The involvement that I participated in at Marine Barracks in Washington was for those individual Marines who were highly decorated, who received
Personal medals.
individual medals
Medals.
for acts of heroism and valor that are far beyond that of the average individual who was also a veteran and in combat. These are individuals who received the Bronze Star, the Silver Star, or even the Congressional Medal of
Or
Honor.
the Navy Cross or the Distinguished Service
Right,
Cross.
exactly.
May I step in here? If you have a campaign medal, it's usually circular in nature, or any other service medal like a good conduct medal or commendation medal. They're circular medals. The crosses or the stars mean you're decorated and you're highly decorated. Does
That is
does
a way of differentiating. Yeah, yeah. When you see an actual medal on an
So you
individual.
would see medal people awarded Medal of Honor, and you would be there with the,
Right, and we as a unit would perform musical selections for their family and friends who were in attendance. A high-ranking Marine officer would be the presenter of the medal. If it was a Medal of Honor, and the Commandant or one of his senior generals was at the base at the time of the ceremony, that would be the individual that would be awarding that particular individual medal to that soldier, that Marine. And along with the presentation was the reading of the citation. And I'll tell you, Dean, not only did I be reduced to tears in many cases. A number of my fellow Marines were reduced to tears as well when you read the actual accounts of the heroism that these individuals actually did to accomplish what they did. It really went far and beyond what you can possibly imagine.
So it bothers you when people say that some people are highly decorated because they have a lot of medals.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
you knowing and seeing.
Yeah, there is a difference between a unit citation and an individual medal that really denotes an act of unbelievable heroism.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sure.
So the highly decorated basically are individual medals. The decorated soldier gets basically from your
A unit
experience,
citation.
or unit or personal good conduct medal or commendation medal or achievement medal. That means you're decorated. You're saying, and I agree with you, that the higher medals, the stars and the crosses, Navy Cross, Distinguished Service Cross, are higher decorated personnel.
Those individuals accomplished extraordinary acts of heroism.
And we don't want to take away that highly decorated.
Sure. They're in a special class.
Yeah, I agree.
They are. They're in
I
a special
agree.
class.
When I see some people from the press who say these people are highly decorated, and I look at the medals, I disagree with that. It seems like they think everybody's highly decorated because they're in a combat area, and that's not always the case. So the problem is that we run out of time again, and we haven't even talked about your experiences going across the country, going to different venues and playing in different halls and theaters for the nation, patriotic songs.
So maybe we can talk about that in another show.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea because, I mean, you were well traveled.
We traveled all over the country.
Did you? Let me ask you a question. Did you go to all 50 states or mostly all?
No, we went to a number of different states. Serving under the presidency of Lyndon Johnson, we were sent to Texas quite a bit.
Oh, wow.
But we performed all over the country.
So you marched in bands in Texas and in parades, I'm sorry.
Yes.
In parades, the
Yes.
type of thing. So can anybody call 8th and I in Washington and request you to come?
You can actually do that. And it's run through the Department of Defense. And if it's considered a reasonable request and the calendar is open for that particular date, it's quite possible to bring the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps
So they could come
to Chelmsford or to Lowell.
To Chelmsford,
Yeah.
4th of July parade. But usually you're doing
That
something.
would be
great.
incredible. But in a situation where you're talking about a major event like a 4th of July, they're probably in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I kind of gather
Yeah.
that. But and then the other type of event that they could
Yeah.
come and play if they're requested to play.
No,
Now,
maybe
who would foot the bill?
Maybe the Department of Defense.
They
Yeah.
would-
Maybe the birthday of the town of Chelmsford might be a good time. An anniversary event for the town of Chelmsford.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Might be a great idea to try and get them in.
So any type of band, even the Marine band, you could actually ask them to come and play in your town, as long as the calendar and they're in the area.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
all right. Thank you for coming. I mean, it's
You're
just
quite welcome.
yeah,
It's a pleasure.
definitely. It's just one of those things. Thank you for playing for us. I mean, it's.
I enjoyed it.
What do you do now? What's real quick?
I perform with the Adagio Big Band,
Oh,
which
good.
is right here in Chelmsford,
Oh, good.
comprised of a number of Chelmsford musicians and vocalists and folks from other parts of the greater Boston area. And I play with Rico Barr and the Jump and Jive Review, which is 7, 8, or 9.
War II, Rationing. And the Screen magazine in its second issue tried to explain to me. And he wanted to know that what he could do if they were approved.
That's David Dubinsky, United States Marines. He was in the Drum and Bugle Corps in Washington, D.C. And what was that, a medley of?
That was a respectful medley to all of the branches of the services, and I found it interesting that the only theme that I muffed up,
Was the Marine Corps.
was my theme. That was interesting. I was kind of running out of air, and I was thinking about running out of air rather than thinking about playing the tune, which is not a good thing to do. But it is what it is, and
Yeah.
this is live.
Yes, it is.
So it brings out the human aspect of what it is to be not only a Marine, but what it is to be a musician in a live context.
Very good. David was in the Marines, went to Parris Island in 1966, did the advanced infantry training at Camp Lejeune, got orders to go to Washington, D.C. to play with the United States Marine Drum and Bugle Corps at 8th and I. 8th and I is the oldest Marine base in the country. Is
In
that
the world.
correct? In the world. And he was there for how long? You were there 3
From
years.
66 to 69, 3
Was
years.
in the inaugural parade. Was that? We didn't talk about the White House the last time. You at the White House? How
right.
many?
We played a number of times.
times?
Lyndon Johnson was the president at the time. We played a number of times at White House dinner events. We played a number of White House with arrival and departure ceremonies where foreign dignitary heads of state would visit with the President of the United States, and we would be performing outside on the lawn of the White House in advance of and subsequent to speeches by the President and the foreign dignitary.
The Commandant Zone. What's that mean? The Commandant Zone. He owns it.
The Commandant, we are at the bidding of the Commandant of the Marine Corps, who is the top-ranking general officer of the Marine Corps, sitting on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Basically, whatever the Commandant says, we basically do. We perform at all major events throughout Washington, D.C., Virginia, and Maryland, at all of the major memorial statues and monuments throughout Washington, D.C. For various holiday and special events. And we travel around. We traveled around the country as they do today. And I understand from my connections with some of the folks that are still there in the Commandant's Zone. Today they're traveling outside of the country representing the United States.
Oh, they
and the
didn't do
United
that
States
when
Marine
you.
Corps.
They
No.
didn't do that when you were there.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Did they have women in the Drum and Bugle Corps at that
We
time?
did not at that time, but at this time they do.
Good.
They do. They have female and male. Marines.
And everybody marches together in the parade. Do you get sick and tired of marching?
At some point down the road, things can sometimes begin to become old.
Yeah.
But
does the Star Spangled Banner become old? Seeing
no,
that
you know,
it
it's funny.
100,000
It's
times?
funny. As much as I just butchered the Marine Corps hymn, it never gets old, and neither does the Star Spangled Banner, because there's certain meaning behind it
Right.
that transcends repetition.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, you're also a rifleman, also to protect the compound if something happens.
Yes,
I remember
every Marine is a basic rifleman. You go through combat training. You go through re-qualification on the rifle and the .45 caliber pistol on an annual basis, and then you fall back and do what your particular military occupational specialty or MOS might be.
Did you see the President of the United States? Was he front and center?
I have seen, yeah.
Vice President?
I saw Lyndon Johnson a number of times. And an interesting aside is when I was serving, one of the officers at our barracks at the command center in Washington was Captain Robb, Chuck Robb, who later became the husband of Linda Johnson, who was President Johnson's daughter, and became, I believe, the governor of the state of Virginia.
That's correct.
And
Let me ask you a question. Did you guys play for the wedding? Was the wedding at the
we
White
did
House?
Not. I don't recall where the
don't-
wedding was. I don't know. I don't know the answer
And
to that.
he was in Vietnam, wasn't he?
Yes. Yes, and our commanding officer, my commanding officer for the barracks at that time was Captain Christmas. Captain Christmas later became General Christmas many years later, and he was the commanding officer of the Marine Corps League, which is basically a organization for Marine veterans post-discharge.
You talked about reunions. Do you go down for reunions?
Yes, we just had our 75th reunion a couple of years ago in Washington.
Wow.
And
how many people show up for that?
there were about, I would say, 300 Marines and their families. And we spent a whole week, my wife and I spent a whole week in Washington, traveling around, reacquainting ourselves with old friends, getting to know some new people. The Commandant's Own actually performed for us at the hotel where we stayed. We stayed at the Sheraton in Arlington, Virginia, not far from the Marine Corps Memorial.
Okay.
And we had a great time. We had an
Now-
absolutely great time.
Now you played taps at the the memorial.
Arlington
and you would
Cemetery.
stand on the monument.
Oh, yes, yes. I was asked to perform taps at the conclusion of our Tuesday night Iwo Jima performances with the silent drill team.
What time would that start?
That would be around sunset. It began at sunset, and it ended basically in the dark.
So it's open to the public.
Open to the public.
So if you're in Washington D.C. in the summertime, Tuesday
At the
contact-
Iwo Jima Memorial.
contact the Marine Barracks at 8th and I.
Yes.
It's probably on the website. Yeah.
And the Friday night parades at the barracks are even more impressive.
How far is that from the White House or the Capitol? 8th and I.
Well, if you think of the Capitol is at basically 0, so it'd be 8 blocks southeast, and then
South.
the difference between A to I in the alphabet,
Right.
it's probably a couple of miles away.
Oh, that far
Yeah,
away.
probably
Okay.
a couple of miles away.
All right.
Yeah,
So when they have the Marine Band, and I've seen the Marine Band play,
sure.
what does it mean it's president's own band?
Okay. The Marine Band has the designation of being the President's own, as the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps has the designation of being the Commandant's own. The history behind the designation of the Marine Band as being the President's own is basically, it dates back to John Philip Sousa's reign as the conductor and basically father of the Marine Band. John Philip Sousa probably wrote more memorable marches in the American patriotic songbook than any other composer in our lifetime. And as a result, he became basically embraced by the President of the United States, and the Marine Band in turn became embraced by the President, the office of the President of the United States.
Right.
And at some point, I can't remember exactly at what point, the designation, excuse me, was made that the Marine Band was the President's own.
When you would go to places like Lyndon Johnson was from Texas, he was the senator and he was the president, and they would fly you down there in the military plane?
They would fly us down most of the time. Occasionally, if we were fortunate enough, we would be flying on a charter commercial airline. Most of the time we were flying on C-130 or C-47 troop transport planes. It was very interesting. On one occasion we took off from, I can't remember if it was Andrews.
Usually it was Andrews. Usually.
We took off, and one of they were turboprop jets at that point.
Right, the C-130s were.
And one of the engines just basically conked out, and the plane listed to one side, and we all looked at each other. It was like a moment of complete silence. All you could hear was the engines running and one engine sputtering. And we basically went right back to the airport. They landed the plane, and we deplaned, and we stayed in the airport for about 8 hours.
Who fed you?
While they fixed. We were fed right there on the base by the Air Force. Now, no disrespect to the Air Force, but the quality of life in the Air Force was quite a bit better than it was in the Marine Corps.
Even stationed at 8th and I?
Even stationed at 8th and I,
anyway.
yeah.
So
the mess hall at 8th and I was a typical Marine Corps mess hall.
Mm-hmm.
The food was excellent, but there were no fringes, it was just, it was basic accommodations. You had a tray. If I remember correctly, the tray had sections carved out for an entree and a couple of.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a metal tray.
It was, exactly.
Yeah. So you're saying the Air Force food was much better?
In our travels, we stayed at a number of different branches of service bases. And by far, the Air Force was amazing. One time we played, every November 10th, we played for the Marine Corps Ball for the birthday of the Marine Corps, November 10th.
All right.
They would send us to New York City to play at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel for a huge celebration. And we would stay at the Brooklyn Navy Yard. And again, no disrespect to our friends in the Navy or our folks in Brooklyn, but that was like the worst military operation I've ever seen in my life. I feel sorry for those guys who were in the Navy who were stationed at the Brooklyn Navy Yard.
It's no longer in existence.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know
It's
that.
been closed down for quite some time.
Okay.
Because,
that was a trip.
Because they used to build aircraft carriers there. What happened is that they were so high they couldn't go under the bridges.
Oh, God.
The Williamsburg Bridge or the Manhattan Bridge.
Got
They
it.
couldn't, so they had to take down the radar and all that stuff so it could get underneath the bridge. So I think they shut that down. It wasn't practical.
That's funny. So we played for the president. We played flag pageants at elementary schools all around the Washington, in the Washington schools, in Maryland and Virginia schools.
So if the schools in Chelmsford wanted you to play, could you play? I mean,
that might be difficult because we brought the esteemed color guard of the Marine Corps that was stationed right at the Marine Barracks, and a small contingent of the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps. If the town of Chelmsford, for its annual celebration, anniversary, birthday,
or any town.
Or any town wanted to bring the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps, they could request, they could call the number that's listed on the internet and request a presentation. It is possible that if the calendar was open, the Drum Corps goes on tour different types of the year.
I see.
And they could potentially be in the area and tie it into an existing part of their tour.
Because they're always looking for a place.
Yeah.
They're always looking for places.
Yeah.
So if you're out there and you want the Marine Drum and Bugle Corps to come to your town, put a request in. There's nothing, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah. I'm told that they performed last year. I believe the number was over 400 performances in a calendar year. If you think about that, there's 365 days in a year. That is a lot of performing.
Mm-hmm.
So on some days they're performing twice a day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, consider that for your parade. I don't think 4th of July would be a good idea, but if you had it like on the 2nd or 5th of July, maybe that might be some flexibility.
Or
there.
even if the venue was large enough, an indoor concert presentation, as long as the stage is big enough, that would be something
Like
to behold.
like the
Something to
Lowell
behold.
Auditorium
The
or
Lowell
the
Auditorium, or
Saunders
even the
Center.
Performing Arts Center here in Chelmsford would be a perfect environment for a patriotic presentation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Recently,
That's
there
a
was
huge
a
stage.
recently patriotic environment participation in Worcester. I think it was a year or two ago.
At Mechanics Hall?
No, at the they changed the name. The Centrum. They used to call it
Centrum.
Centrum. Yeah, they changed the name, and they're always changing the names
Sure.
of these arenas. But there was the Army drill team. There was the fife and drum
Drum Corps.
Corps. You're familiar with them.
Yeah, sure.
They dress up in patriotic
Sure.
outfits and red jackets
Sure.
and play. And all they have is the drums and the
fifes.
yeah.
It's a colonial look.
Yeah. Yeah,
Excuse me.
and they marched in half step, and it was pretty interesting. I went down with some friends, and we saw that. It was pretty interesting. And they had the Army rifle team. that's a possibility that I could come up here. The whole,
Sure.
the whole thing. So you anything you remember? You performed in front of the Lincoln Monument, the Capitol. Did you ever
All of
play inside the Capitol, or do you play outside the
Outside.
Capitol? Outside.
Yeah, I think we did perform in the rotunda inside the Capitol, but the echo in there is tremendous.
Oh, I see.
So that in terms of the musical, the listening aspect.
Have you seen the new visitor center? You
No.
could fit the band in there.
Really?
It's a rectangular, but it's ornate.
That would be great.
And it's big enough to fit a group in there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
and that
surprised
place-
if the group that I played in and others have already played there.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was one of the reasons why it was so big.
Sure.
I mean, it's just amazing. It's underground.
Wow.
It's underground. It cost, I think, $500 million to build it.
Wow.
Security, etc. You know, and then you go into the Capitol underground.
That's
so,
incredible.
Yeah. So, did you perform at any funerals?
Yes, I was part of a group that played for deceased senior officers in the Marine Corps.
Who wanted to be buried at Arlington Cemetery?
Yes, yes, and it was
That
quite a highly regarded, very ceremonial type of a funeral. Oftentimes there were caissons, horse-drawn caissons, with a platoon of Marines from the Ceremonial Guard Company, and a contingent from the Marine Band would be marching towards a gravesite from the chapel, playing hymns, and I would play taps, and a firing
21-gun salute.
squad would play. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
In that environment, you could do 2 or 3 a day. I mean,
Yeah, generally, we didn't have that type of situation.
Yeah.
They were generally scheduled because there was so much time involved in preparation and the actual execution of the performance.
because the Army is also burying people there, and the
Right.
Navy is burying people
Right.
there.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I
Yeah.
wasn't involved, but
You were.
there were simultaneous.
Yeah,
Yes.
from what I
sure, and they were
understand-
highly coordinated.
Yeah, exactly. From what I
Exactly.
understand, there's probably 20 burials a day.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
at
surprised.
Arlington.
I would not be surprised.
So you would play taps? Is
Mm-hmm.
that? That's how we met, by the way. We met at the monument in
The
Chelmsford,
Veterans Memorial.
the Veterans Memorial in Chelmsford. I was there for some reason just to check it out. Sometimes I go there to have peace of mind. And you came up at noontime and you blew taps. And that was like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm saying, who's this guy playing taps? There's
played-
no one around.
I played taps and I played the Marine Corps hymn without a mistake. It was amazing.
And no one was around to see it. That's the
And nobody was
problem.
around. Well, every year I go to that memorial and now the new Vietnam Memorial in North Chelmsford. And sometimes I'll even go to other towns and visit their veterans memorial sites as a private kind of remembrance.
On your own.
On my own. On my own, yeah.
Call me someday and we'll go together.
We
I'd
will.
like to do that.
We will
So, anything that you remember about being in the Drum and Bugle Corps that was outstanding? How was your rank? Did you get ranked very easy?
I was
there?
an NCO. No, it was not very easy because it was in the middle of the Vietnam War.
Oh, I see.
And we were not in combat situations. I was in for 3 years, and I achieved the rank of corporal. In the Marine Corps, corporal's equal to a sergeant in the Army.
So that was
I was
E5?
I was an E4,
E4, okay.
and which is a non-commissioned officer
Right.
in the Marine Corps.
Right.
They hung for 6 months prior to my discharge on my first enlistment. They hung the sergeant's stripes over my head as an incentive for me to re-enlist. But I had plans to go in at Berklee College of Music, and I had a burning desire. At the time, I was studying with the soloist from the Marine Band, a phenomenal trumpet player, also from Pennsylvania.
Do you still keep in contact with him?
No, I've lost contact. His name was Terrence Detweiler.
You
a
didn't. You've
tremendous.
never Googled it on the internet?
I know we both were members of the Trumpet Guild, which is a musicians organization, but I have not. I will rekindle my relationship with Terry as a result of our conversation
Very
right
good.
now.
Did you play little jazz combos while you were in the drum and bugle corps or anything like that? Or?
While I was in the drum corps, I was so consumed with my duties and performances there.
Polish.
I did teach the Boys Club in Washington, D.C. The Boys Club Drum and Bugle Corps had called the Ambassadors. The Boys Clubs of America had a drum and bugle corps, and I was asked to teach them. So I wrote their arrangements and worked with them.
Oh, good.
And it was a great experience. Every Tuesday night, I believe it was, or Wednesday night, I would go to their Boys Club Center in Washington and work with them for a couple of hours.
Oh, that was nice.
And they performed in parades and they competed. And when I got out of the service, I went to Berklee College of Music on the GI Bill, became very much involved with performing at Berklee. I was fortunate enough to play lead trumpet with Herb Pomeroy's recording jazz ensemble.
Oh, wow.
I played in small groups with Dean Earl and Charlie Mariano and a number of other.
Did you play
really
around the venues around
Yeah,
Berklee?
I got involved with Bobby Vinton when different musicians came in town. Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons.
Let's talk about that. Isn't there a Hollywood, not a Hollywood, a play, Jersey Boys?
Jersey Boys is a Tony Award-winning Broadway show that's been circulating around the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming back to Boston. It's a great show.
Mm-hmm.
Frankie Valli was a great pop idol from the 50s and 60s and even into the 70s. And sometimes when I'm sitting in Rosie's Diner right here in North Chelmsford, I'm listening to cuts from Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. I never know what I'm gonna hear in different restaurants.
So you played for them?
I was
for
hired
him?
from their New York office to put together a 5-piece horn section, and we would travel anywhere in New England where Frankie Valli was performing. We would meet them and we'd perform with them.
Oh,
yeah.
wow, that's interesting.
And sometimes they were at a resort. It might be in Hyannis or any other seaside
Are you
resort.
going to the play?
I've seen Jersey Boys twice.
And,
Yeah, it's fabulous.
Oh, it is? Okay.
There's a chance I might see it a third time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as somebody gives you tickets or puts you on the list?
No, we'll buy the
Oh,
tickets.
okay,
We'll
you'll
buy
buy
it.
the
It's a great show. Great show. Great music.
Is it a good show to take children to?
It is. It's a good show. It shows growing up in a very tough environment in the inner city, kids who got into a lot of trouble, and their common bond, their saving grace was music, and it turned out that music basically, in a number of cases, in terms of the guys in the band, saved their lives.
Wasn't it more harmony?
Yeah, a lot of harmony. And they were really good rock and roll musicians.
That's
you know,
basically
in the age of rock and roll.
Rock and roll started.
Yeah.
They were in the infancy of rock
Yeah.
and roll. Are
Yeah.
they in the Rock and Roll Museum in Cleveland?
I don't know if they are, but I can't imagine that they would not be.
All
Yeah,
right.
I can't
So who
imagine.
else did you play with?
I played with Rita Moreno, who was Maria in West Side Story.
Right.
She was.
That's another play that's come back
It's a great,
to New York.
great show. The best, in my opinion, the best Broadway show ever.
I like
the
that.
music and
Oh,
dance in that show
yeah.
was nothing short of incredible.
I have the DVD at home.
Lenny Bernstein did a phenomenal job with that score.
I agree with you. That
Yeah.
was
Phenomenal.
and then they had the movie after they had the Broadway
Right.
show, and the movie was
Right.
filmed in East Manhattan, not on the west side of Manhattan, on
No
the
kidding.
east side. Yeah,
No
I
kidding.
just want to tell you a
I
little
didn't know
inside.
that.
Yeah, see?
That's good trivia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to
Yeah,
let you
and I
know.
played with Bobby Vinton. I played with Frank Fontaine, who was Crazy Guggenheim on the old Jackie Gleason show.
Yes.
He had a great voice, really nice voice. I played with the Ink Spots.
I know the
I
Ink
played
Spots, I'm aware
some
of them.
off-Broadway shows at the North Shore Music Theater in Beverly. I've had a lot of fun. Right now I play with the Adagio Big Band, which is locally based here in North Chelmsford. I play with the Rico Bar and the Jump and Jive Review, which is comprised of members of all over the Merrimack Valley and some from Boston, some members from Boston.
Let me ask you a question. Near Berkeley, there was a small little club.
The Jazz Workshop and Paul's Mall.
No, it wasn't Paul's Mall. It was sort of closer to Symphony Hall. It was a hole in the wall. I went in there with my friends, and I was blown away because all these musicians from Berkeley played there, and I can't remember the name of it. They finally closed it down after 20 or 30 years.
There were and there are a number of jazz venues around. For folks in our area, I encourage you to go to the Acton Jazz Cafe, which is less than a half an hour from here.
Oh, is that right?
Just off
wow.
of Route 119, behind the Workers Credit Union. They have some nice jazz and nice blues. It's live entertainment. Support your local jazz artists. It's great.
Yeah,
It's a great thing.
I've been into jazz for years and years and years.
Scullers
You
is
know what got
another-
me into jazz when I was in the Army?
Really?
There were a lot of guys into jazz, and
Sure.
we started listening to jazz, and I picked up a feel for it.
The Air Force, a plug for the Air Force. The Air Force has probably, in my opinion, the best jazz band in the military music scene, the Airmen of Note. If you're ever in the Washington area or have a chance to catch the Airmen of Note, it's a phenomenal jazz band.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I asked you earlier whether you did jazz on the side or whether, or did the Marines have a jazz band out of the
Within the
presidential
Marine
law?
band, they did have a jazz group, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The drum corps was mostly ceremonial. That was our role.
All you had is drums and.
Drums and bugles, and they were not bugles in the traditional old Civil War vantage. They had valves, and they had full chromatic capability. But instead of being pitched in the key of B flat, like most band instruments, they were pitched in G, so they were a higher tonality. And they had field trumpets. They had mellophones that were similar to French horns. They had French horns. They had baritones. They had euphoniums.
So
they had
there's a variety.
contrabasses that were similar to sousaphones in a band. So you had this whole complex brass band sound in a higher key that created a brighter sound, but you had the full complement of band instruments that represented the members of the brass family with full percussion. The percussion sections were outstanding. It was not unusual that you saw 6 fully complemented snare drums, tom-toms, tuned bass drums, cymbals, sometimes marching timpani. It was an elaborate display, mallet percussion instruments.
With that, we're going to end the show.
Okay.
Okay, thank you
Thank
very
you
much
very
for coming. I appreciate it.
was a
That was
pleasure.
a great presentation at the end.